potato family Irish. Oh, you say? What is stupid? Wow, god damn it. Come on, no! Oh, fuck, so sick, fuck, bro. Oh, yeah. I want to see that whiff. I think this might actually be consistent. Damn it. Don't they know what the people want? Okay. Alright, okay, so what I've been doing is I've been looking at sequences for burnout. So, like, let's say the opponent's at, 2 bars, you're at, like, 4 bars. What's the best sequence to... What's the longest true block string that you can do that they can't parry in between? Stop doing that. That they can't parry in between, etc. For shaving off their drive gauge bar. There's a couple of details here. One is that once the opponent gets below 0.5, exactly at 0.5 or below, they can no longer parry. Effectively, realistically speaking, they can no longer parry. Let me demonstrate. So if I did, if I put him to block, reversal, parry. If I delay the... Okay, bad example, but, like, what's going on is basically perfect parry has a 2-frame window. If you parry within 2 frames of the active frame hitting you, you get the perfect parry. When you whiff a parry, it immediately takes 0.5, half a bar of drive gauge. So the thing about this is that if you burn yourself out on that 0.5 bar, your parry immediately stops, which means that you can perfect parry in order to save yourself and not get burnt out. However, it's a much harder perfect parry. You can't just do it within 2 frames the active frame. It has to be literally frame perfect. Otherwise, if you don't parry on the exact frame that you spend the drive gauge, you will burn yourself out and your parry will deactivate. So there are true block strings where you can do like a true string all the way through like that and deal as much damage to their drive gauge bar as possible, or there's sequences where you can put like a slight, where the last action that you can do is like can have like a slight gap in there, but so long as the opponent is at or below 0.5 drive gauge at the point that you do that, they effectively can't deal with it anyways. However, if you do leave a gap... Okay, so let me demonstrate with Cammy. So if Cammy does... Oh, wait, oops. So if Cammy's like best true block string burnout sequence by default, just walking up to the opponent, is stand fierce, drive rush, crouch fierce, back medium punch. All a true block string. However... So her best sequence for just going for the burnout would be, with no other additional set play, no safe jump, anything, just walking up and doing stand fierce. You can do stand fierce, drive rush, there. And that's like the most she can do in one sequence, which is pretty mediocre relative to the rest of the cast. So that's a true block string. However, she could also do that, which does a bit more, does 0.2, 20% of a bar of drive gauge more damage. However, there's a slight gap there. The light knuckle was not part of the true block string. So long as the light knuckle, which does 0.4, so long as everything that you've done after that, before that point, puts the opponent at or below 0.5 bars of drive gauge, the light knuckle, they cannot parry it effectively. Or otherwise, it is nigh impossible to parry it. It is still technically possible, but it doesn't fucking... You can't do it, man. Now, some characters have, I feel, underutilized ability to take advantage of this. Okay, so some players, some characters, like, you know, Marisa players like doing this as a meaty because on block it takes a full bar of drive gauge. So they love doing this. A lot of the time, they love stealing that drive gauge on block in a very reliable, consistent... Marisa's good at this in, like, short bursts. She doesn't have necessarily the longest sequence of drive gauge possible to steal, like some of these other characters. Jamie is pretty good at this because of level 2. Any character with a level 2 can do this pretty well. I got kind of lazy, as I usually do. After I do, like, a bunch of lab work and stuff, I get lazy towards the end. And, so I didn't lab all the stuff with Guile, because he has an install that is underexplored, and I don't know all the ins and outs of him and the character, and I'm not good with charge inputs and such. And I barely looked at Rashid, Aki, or Ed. But, anyways, Jamie is level 2. As a cancel, incredibly good at, 1, this attack on block steals 0.6 bars of drive gauge. It's generally the most that normal characters take on a bar of drive gauge. So then, not only that, but when you're in level 4, his Rekka, just one hit of the Rekka of any strength, takes 0.5. That is a ton for a safe on block special. Most safe on block specials do not take that much. Now, the most optimal that you can get is when you're already in level 4 and you have level 2 available, because then you can get, like... .5 you can steal from the opponent on block in a good sequence. And that's, like, best case scenario where you have, like, relatively high drive gauge to start with and you're already in level 4, you get, like, a safe jump or something, whatever. But, like, he can do a lot just with a very small amount of whatever, especially when he's already in this state. Because you can just get EX Palm, double strike, this, that, and you can steal, like, 3 bars for nothing. For nothing on block with a true block string. Kimberly, also very good at this. In the corner, bomb setups. If you ever get a bomb setup, if you do light bomb, then meaty with this. Not only does this not require drive gauge to do these sequences with Kimberly, which means that if you do, like, let's say, block after first hit, you can regenerate a lot of your drive gauge that you spent in the previous combo while stealing a ton of theirs if they block. So here, this is like, meterlessly, this is like the amount of meter that you can take from the opponent. And you're still +2 after this. You won't be a true block string after this, but you're still +2. That takes 1.9 drive bars away from the opponent. Now, if you want to be a real degenerate, you can do that just with 1 drive gauge bar, and even that 1 drive rush cancel, and even then you regenerate a ton of your drive gauge. You take over 3 bars on block. Over 3 bars on one true block string. Minus, there's a microscopic gap if you do an immediate crouch fierce after your bomb setup. Because what you're actually doing here is you're putting a slight delay there. A 1 frame gap. If this had 1 frame more blocks done, literally 1 frame more blocks done, this would be a true block string. Because you have to manually time this. Is like 5.1 you can take from the opponent in 1 single block string. Now, obviously, there's much more cost-effective ways of doing this, of taking consistent value, but, like, fuck, yeah. Like, that's something that I don't see people abusing as much with this character. JP has the most ridiculous, unfair ones. He can do this in... The mid-screen versions and the corner versions are slightly different, but, like, if he just gets, like, a... If he gets him to block this, which already does an absurd amount of drive gauge from the opponent on a true block string, that doesn't cost you anything and is safe on block. You can take that much, and that doesn't cost any drive gauge. Literally 0 drive gauge, you can take 3.5 from them. You're regenerating drive gauge the whole time. Their only recourse, it's actually 3.4. Their only recourse is to drive reversal at some point, at which point they're spending 2 additional bars anyways. You're still not losing any drive gauge, you're still regenerating drive gauge, and there are ways to bait and beat drive reversals if you are anticipating them. Usually most people won't, like, most people don't think that they're in danger of getting burnt out from a block string when they're, like, at or above 3 bars of drive gauge. But, like, some of these characters are fucking absurd with this. So, like, let's look at... Okay, you get, like, let's say you get a knockdown with JP in the corner. You set up EX departure. Right? Alright, you can do 5.7 to them with that. That's only 1 extra EX move after the startup. And there you go. Full 6 bars. Jury is pretty good at this. There's a number of things. So what people already do with the character is they do, like, oh, this, and then they confirm it into, the first hit of this, and then into that. That takes a full bar of drive gauge, but this is something juries already do. Now, they could theoretically leave it at that. That'll take an extra 0. That looks like 0.2, 0.2, 0.5, or 3 extra bars of extra drive gauge from the opponent. However, there is a slight gap there between the 0 frame, whatever 1 frame gap between that and the fireball at the end. But, like I said, if you're putting them at the point where they're below 0.5, they can't really still parry it. But then, of course, you have Feng Shui, for which, let's say, if you get a drive rush medium punch, then you're +6, you can true block string them into standing medium kick, which does more drive gauge damage than stand medium punch, and then you can go into... Technically, the best sequence would be, like, that. But, you can... If you're starting off of, like, something like this, you can regenerate your own drive gauge better by doing a slightly longer conversion that restores more of your own drive gauge, but less, but takes slightly less from your opponent. Like that. And then you can do that into whatever. You can do it into a special for lockdown. You can, for more drive gauge damage. So, regenerate a lot of your own drive gauge, etc. So you can take quite a lot from the opponent with Jury, but not as much as some of the more, like, insane characters. And that was starting at 3, by the way. DJ does not have, like, the best full-on sequences, but he can take a lot on block for, like, very little. Like, if you get a safe jump, you can guarantee them 1.4 bars down. Other characters, I have, like, things that they can do, but it's, like, mostly whatever. Mostly whatever from here on. The most like dynamic characters for doing this, and I haven't looked at all of Rashid's stuff yet, or Ed's stuff with his level 2. and I haven't super labbed Guile with this. Honda's good, again, in short bursts. He can take a lot of drive gauge off of a true block string very quick, in like one short burst, but not like the full-on sequences like JP or Jamie or Jury or whatever, or Kimberly. So yeah, I think knowing where you can guaranteed chip people, or true block string people into losing all their drive gauge and getting burnt out, pretty interesting. I think that one thing that I noticed from some of the players in Capcom Cup this year was that some of the players in top 16 would, I think NL is probably like, wait, was NL one that did this? There are players that like will, if they can burn the opponent out on a block string, they will burn themselves out to do so. Because if, I think the rationale, and this makes sense to me, and I would agree with this, is that if you have a life lead, if you and your opponent both burn out at the same time, you force both of yourselves to burn out at the same time, one, especially if you have the superior position, then you're the one in the best situation to take advantage of the burnout in that immediate moment. And two, burning both of the opponents out means that there's no real risk factor, because even if your opponent survives the burnout, so will you, and you'll both recover burnout at around the same time. And three, just reducing both you and your opponent's total tool sets by putting yourselves both in burnout means that the game becomes less volatile, because there's less things that can possibly happen, and it makes it easier to maintain and hold on to a life lead during that period of time. So whenever a player, like some of the players that got life leads, if they saw an opportunity to burn their opponent out on block or something, they took it, burned themselves out at the same time, and then they just held that position, and it usually almost always worked out for them. So I think most prominently Jamie, Kimberly, JP are not fully taking advantage of how disgusting their drive gauge stealing is. Some characters can do bursts that I feel they're not fully taking advantage of by confirming blocks. Guile, I can't say for certain, but I am 95% suspicious that Guile players are not fully utilizing the character, and I think his install is probably a lot better than Guile players are utilizing it for. That being said, I hate playing Guile. I'm terrible, especially in this game where the down charge input is longer than it was in SF5. I am really fucking bad at doing it. So, my labbing ability is very tedious and frustrating with the character, so I don't really want to prove that there's a shitload of value in... Okay, but okay, look. Okay, fact number one. His fireball takes more drive gauge from the opponent than a lot of other people's fireballs on block. It just does. Fact number two. All of the mini booms take the same amount as a normal fireball, which means they stack up really quickly. Fact number three. If you just do, like, let's say, I don't know, let's say, Drive Rush, Back Fierce. I keep always forgetting the inputs for the mini booms. If you do that, you're like plus 18 afterwards, and then you can Drive Rush forward. So look, if you're at this spacing, if you do like Back Fierce into the mini booms, you can Drive Rush forwards, and your spacing is nigh guaranteed that if you do knee, it's a frame trap, and you'll be plus 2. There's a bunch of shit you can do with this install to create traps and maintain down charge while throwing booms. So you can... The value in a lot of these things, in the installs and in like Kimberly's bombs, that people still only view Kimberly's bombs as like a mix-up tool, right? It's really more like what all these other level 2s are, a very dynamic tool, where where all these level 2s, JPs, Rashids, Juries, etc. are great for wasting time, building back your own drive gauge, stealing drive gauge from the opponent, managing these things that sometimes become unmanageable. And Giles is fantastic at this. He can regenerate a shitload of drive gauge, he can take back a lot of space, he can deal a lot of drive gauge damage, and he can get openings and skip neutral really easily. So, like, I feel like there's, managerial type work to be done there.